There's a desire women rarely admit, not because it isn't real, but because admitting it breaks the rules they're expected to follow. This isn't surface attraction. It's the pull that lingers, unsettles, and keeps a man in her mind against her will. Most men never touch it, not because they lack value, but because they play by conscious rules, while this desire operates below them. In this video, I'll reveal the silent rule of female desire. Not a tactic, not an act, a psychological structure. It's built on 7 truths. Together, they explain why some men are respected but forgotten, while others are remembered, desired, and chosen without asking. Let's begin. The first truth you must leverage is this: what women defend with words is rarely what their instincts respond to in real situations. What women say they want is not a lie, but it is not the full picture either. When a woman speaks, she is often describing what makes sense to her conscious mind, what sounds correct, what aligns with her values, her identity, her social environment. Respect, equality, kindness, emotional safety, all of that is real. But desire does not live in the conscious layer. Desire lives deeper. Her body doesn't respond to arguments. Her instincts don't follow ideology. They react to signals. And this is the gap most men never see. A man listens to what women say and tries to become that. He becomes more agreeable, more careful, more accommodating. He asks for her opinion constantly. He avoids tension at all costs. And he's shocked when her interest fades. Not because he did something wrong, but because he operated only at the surface level. Women can sincerely believe they want one thing, while their instinctive responses pull them towards something else entirely. That contradiction doesn't make them dishonest. It makes them human. Her conscious mind wants balance. Her instinctive mind responds to certainty. Her conscious mind wants to feel respected. Her instinctive mind wants to feel held by something solid. This is why you see it happen over and over. A woman publicly praises one type of man, then privately feels drawn to another. The mistake is not listening to women. The mistake is listening only to what they say, instead of observing how they respond. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. People explain their choices with reason, but they make them through instinct. When you understand this truth, something shifts. You stop trying to argue with her mind. You stop trying to convince her consciously. You begin to position yourself in a way her instincts can read without explanation. And once you do that, you stop feeling confused by mixed signals, because they were never mixed. They were just operating on 2 different levels. This first truth doesn't change her. It changes how you interpret women. And once that interpretation is correct, the next question becomes unavoidable. If her instincts respond to something deeper than words, what exactly are they responding to? That's where the second truth begins. The second truth you must leverage is this: women are not drawn to harmlessness, but to strength that is clearly present and deliberately restrained. A man who appears incapable of asserting himself feels predictable, flat, neutral. There is no tension around him because there is no edge to contain. His presence is comfortable, but it doesn't linger. But when someone senses that a man could assert power, could walk away, could impose boundaries, and consciously chooses not to unless necessary, the dynamic changes instantly. Machiavelli would see this clearly. Authority is felt most strongly when force is possible but withheld. Think of 2 scenarios. In the first, a man tolerates everything: disrespect, flakiness, small violations. He smiles through it, adapts, explains himself. His behavior signals that nothing in him will push back. Over time, his presence becomes background noise. In the second, a man is calm, warm, attentive, but there is a quiet line beneath the surface. When that line is crossed, his demeanor shifts, not dramatically, not emotionally, simply decisively. He doesn't argue. He doesn't threaten. He disengages or corrects the situation without explanation. That shift lands hard, not because it's aggressive, but because it reveals self-command. Another image. Picture someone who speaks softly, but everyone stops talking when he does. Not because he's loud, but because his words carry weight. That weight comes from the understanding that he doesn't need to raise his voice to be effective. The same principle applies here. Contained strength is far more compelling than exaggerated dominance or endless agreeableness. One repels, the other dissolves interest. But restraint paired with capacity creates tension that the mind can't ignore. This is why certain men are described as intense without doing anything intense. It's not what they show, it's what they don't need to show. Machiavelli would phrase it coldly: the man who must constantly prove strength has already lost it. This truth forces a reevaluation. You stop asking, "How can I be more reassuring?" and start asking, "What am I capable of, and do others feel that?" Because once that capacity is sensed, even silence carries meaning. And that leads naturally to the next truth. If controlled strength creates tension, what happens when that tension is never broken by emotional instability? That's where the third truth comes in. The third truth you must leverage is this: emotional stability creates far more pull than constant reassurance or emotional comfort. Many men believe the goal is to make her feel comfortable at all times, to remove tension, to reassure constantly, to smooth every emotional edge. What they don't realize is that excessive comfort relaxes attention instead of focusing it. Emotional stability is not about pleasing. It's about remaining unchanged when the atmosphere shifts. Picture a moment where the energy subtly drops, a pause in the conversation, a sudden silence, a slightly sharp comment. Most men feel it immediately and rush to fix it. They talk more. They explain. They joke nervously. Their internal state adjusts to the situation instead of holding it. That adjustment is felt. Now imagine the opposite. The moment shifts and the man doesn't. His tone stays the same. His posture doesn't collapse. He doesn't rush to fill space or repair discomfort. He lets the moment exist without reacting to it. That calm does something powerful. It tells her, without words, that his emotional state is not fragile. That tension does not shake him. That he doesn't need to control her emotions to feel okay himself. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. The one who remains steady while others adjust becomes the reference point. Another scene. She challenges something he says, not aggressively, just enough to test. One man immediately defends himself, justifies, explains his intention. The other pauses, listens, and responds slowly, without urgency. He doesn't seek to win. He doesn't seek approval. He stays centered. The second response lands deeper, not because it's clever, but because it shows inner authority. Emotional comfort says, "I'll make sure nothing feels uncomfortable." Emotional stability says, "I can hold discomfort without losing myself." That difference matters more than most people realize. When someone feels that your presence doesn't fluctuate with every emotional change, something settles inside them. They stop monitoring you. They stop testing as much. Their attention shifts from control to curiosity. This truth reshapes how interactions feel. You're no longer trying to manage the mood. You're allowing the mood to reveal itself while you remain intact. And once that stability is established, another dynamic naturally emerges. If you don't rush to comfort, if you don't collapse under tension, what happens when your attention is not always immediately available? That's where the next truth takes over. The fourth truth you must leverage is this: attention only gains value when it is not always available or guaranteed. When your time, focus, and availability are always accessible, They stop carrying weight. They become background noise, familiar, predictable, and predictability quietly drains interest. Most men believe that being consistently present is a sign of seriousness. They reply quickly. They initiate often. They adjust their schedule instantly. They think constancy builds connection. What it often builds instead is emotional flatness. Now picture two different rhythms. In the first, a man is always reachable. Messages are answered immediately. Plans are always flexible. His presence is reliable, but expected. There's no friction, no anticipation, no space for desire to stretch. In the second, a man is present, but not endlessly. He engages fully when he's there. And when he's not, he's genuinely absorbed elsewhere. His time feels structured. His attention feels intentional. That difference is felt immediately, not as rejection, as value. Machiavelli would understand this without hesitation. What is always available is never fully appreciated. Another image. She reaches out. Sometimes the response comes quickly, sometimes later. Not as a tactic, not as silence for effect. Simply because his life already has movement, projects, commitments, focus. That variability forces her mind to adjust. She begins to notice when attention is given. She begins to feel the absence when it isn't. She starts assigning meaning to moments that were once taken for granted. This isn't about withholding. It's about not overextending. There's a crucial difference. Overextending says, "I'm afraid to lose this." Bounded attention says, "This has a place in my life, not the center of it." Another scenario. Plans are suggested last minute. One man always says yes. He rearranges everything. The other occasionally declines, calmly, without apology, because his time was already allocated. That refusal doesn't create distance. It creates structure. Structure invites investment. When attention is not guaranteed, it becomes something to engage with rather than consume. The dynamic subtly shifts. She begins to lean in instead of taking for granted. This truth does not ask you to disappear. It asks you to matter when you appear. And once attention carries weight, another question forms naturally. What happens when someone knows you're not always available, but also knows you can walk away entirely if needed? That's where the next truth comes into play. The fifth truth you must leverage is this. Nothing reshapes a dynamic faster than knowing you can leave without chaos. This is not about threats, not about ultimatums, not about dramatic exits. It's about something far quieter and far more powerful. Most men stay, even when they shouldn't. They tolerate small disrespect. They explain themselves too much. They negotiate what should never be negotiated. And each time they do, they communicate something without words. I need this to continue. That need is felt. Now imagine a different posture. A man notices a line being crossed. Not a catastrophe, not a crisis. Just a shift in tone, a lack of consideration, a pattern beginning to form. He doesn't react emotionally. He doesn't lecture. He doesn't punish. He simply withdraws presence. His tone cools slightly. His availability changes. His investment pauses. Not to manipulate, but because alignment is no longer there. That pause lands harder than any argument ever could. Machiavelli would see this as pure leverage. The one who can remove himself without disturbance holds the balance. Another image. She pushes a boundary. Many men respond immediately. They explain why it hurt. They ask for reassurance. They try to fix the moment in real time. In doing so, they expose how attached they are to the outcome. The man who understands this truth does something else. He lets the moment pass. He creates distance, not silence, not hostility, distance. And that distance forces reflection. She feels the shift before she understands it. Because what's unsettling is not anger, it's the absence of need. Another scenario. Plans are made casually. She cancels last minute. One man accommodates instantly. Another accepts it calmly and does not immediately reschedule. He doesn't punish. He doesn't complain. He simply returns to his life. That response reorders the dynamic. It introduces consequence without confrontation. Machiavelli would phrase it bluntly. Respect is never requested. It is enforced through consistency. This truth works because it signals three things at once. First, self-respect. Second, options. Third, emotional self-sufficiency. And those three signals combine into authority. The ability to withdraw calmly doesn't mean you disappear forever. It means you are not trapped. You are not dependent. You are not afraid of loss. That knowledge changes how others move around you. They become more careful, more attentive, more invested. Not because they are controlled, but because the stakes become real. This truth is especially powerful because it doesn't require action most of the time. The possibility alone is enough. Once someone senses that you could walk away and that you would do it quietly if needed, the entire interaction recalibrates. And once that recalibration happens, one final layer becomes possible, because withdrawal creates respect. But respect alone is not the end. The deepest bond forms when respect meets something else entirely. The sixth truth you must leverage is this. The strongest attachment appears when influence replaces control. At a certain point, attraction stops responding to tension, rhythm, or distance alone. It shifts into something quieter, something heavier, something that doesn't need to be enforced. This is where many men fail, because they confuse closeness with control. Trying to monitor, trying to secure, trying to define everything too clearly. But real attachment doesn't grow under pressure. It grows where someone feels fully seen and unthreatened at the same time. Picture a space where she doesn't need to perform, where she doesn't need to defend herself, where nothing is demanded, yet everything feels anchored. That space doesn't come from intensity. It comes from depth. A man who listens without trying to fix, who understands fear without exploiting it, who remains present without clinging. Machiavelli would understand this paradox instantly. The deepest loyalty is not taken, it is offered. Another image. She shares something vulnerable. Many men rush to reassure. Others withdraw emotionally. But the man who holds this truth does neither. He stays. He absorbs. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't change how he sees her. That steadiness creates safety, not the fragile kind, but the kind that allows surrender without force. This is where attachment stops being reactive and becomes chosen. She doesn't feel owned. She feels aligned. And alignment lasts longer than excitement ever could. But there is one final layer beneath even this. Because depth creates attachment, but what makes it irreversible is something else entirely. The final truth you must leverage is this. Being chosen by someone who does not need to choose is the strongest signal there is. At the deepest level, desire sharpens when two things coexist: freedom and selection. Not obligation, not dependence. Selection. When someone senses that you are complete without them, yet you still place them within your life intentionally, something locks in. Your presence stops feeling accidental. It starts feeling meaningful. Machiavelli would close the lesson this way. Power reaches its peak when others move toward you voluntarily. This is why asking weakens desire. Explaining dilutes it. Negotiating kills it. But choosing, quietly, consistently, without urgency, does the opposite. It tells her, I don't need this, I want this, and I can leave if it no longer aligns. That message lands deeper than reassurance ever could, because it resolves the final instinctive question: am I here because I'm needed or because I'm chosen? When the answer is chosen, attachment stops fluctuating. It stabilizes. And at that point, the rule is no longer something you apply. It's something you embody. You don't chase. You don't explain. You don't force. You simply occupy a position. And from that position, everything responds. What you've just uncovered is not a technique. It's a law that operates quietly, beneath words, opinions, and appearances. A law that explains why some men are respected but overlooked, while others are felt, remembered, and chosen without effort. You now understand something most never will. Desire does not respond to compliance. It responds to structure, restraint, and inner command. This is the difference between moving through the world hoping to be accepted and moving through it as someone others orient themselves around. A warrior is not defined by noise or force. He is defined by alignment. He knows when to step forward. He knows when to hold ground. And he knows when to walk away without looking back. If this opened your eyes and you're serious about becoming the man who's in full control of his life, my book is now available. The Undeniable Man, Built to be Chosen. It's a strategic guide for men who want to attract, lead, and dominate in their love life and beyond. Whether you're single or in a relationship, no fluff, no tricks, just pure, powerful strategy that will set you apart from 99% of men, and that you will actually use every day. The link is in the description. And if this video spoke to you, don't just keep your thoughts in your head. Write a comment, even just a few words. It helps you remember these lessons, and it might help someone else too. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this content, and share it with someone who, in your eyes, needs it right now. Just trust your instinct. We're all trying to get clearer, more solid inside. So let's build minds that don't break.